This week is the story of Abram, who saw that it was needful for him to obtain another place of residence, which is definitely putting it lightly, considering that he was going to be sacrificed to Canaanite and Egyptian gods. Before Abram lifted his voice to the Lord, and the angel of Jehovah delivered him and gave him a mission to go to a land which he would show him. The Lord also promised to give him the priesthood, and that through Abram the Lord's name would be known on earth forever. What was it about Abram that warranted these blessings? It was because Abram refused to worship the gods of his society, and instead found that there was greater happiness in righteousness. He wanted knowledge, and to be a father of many nations, a prince of peace, to receive instruction, and to keep the commandments of God. He asked and he received. He knocked and the doors were opened. And so Abram took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and his father Terah, and went into Canaan, which would one day be Israel. They named the place which they arrived Haran, and Abram's father Terah began practicing idolatry again. But Abram and Lot prayed unto the Lord, and the Lord made a covenant with Abram, that the land of Canaan would be given to Abram's descendants as an everlasting possession. Abram's descendants would be a great nation, and through him all the nations of the earth would be blessed with priesthood. As many as receive the gospel are called after Abram's name. You're a descendant of Abram. This covenant is still in effect today, and is probably more important than ever. You are tasked with this mission, to spread the gospel and gather Israel before the second coming of Christ. Continuing the story, Abram went to Egypt and told Pharaoh that Sarai was his sister so that Pharaoh didn't kill him to marry her. Pharaoh took Sarai but was quickly cursed by God because of it, so he sent her and Abram away. Moving on to Genesis 13, Abram and Lot had too many livestock to live together, so they agree to split up, and Abram lets Lot choose which piece of land he wants, and of course Lot chooses the better portion. This shows Abram as peacemaking, to let his nephew have the better land just so they could keep getting along. We're in Genesis 14 now, and it becomes clear that Abram ended up with a better deal, because the land Lot chose was right next to Sodom, which quickly became a war zone. Sodom and Gomorrah got sacked and Lot was taken captive. Abram, being courageous, rescued him. Later, Abram paid a visit to Melchizedek, the king of Salem. Salem was most likely the progenitor of Jerusalem. The name Melchizedek means king of righteousness, or maybe my king is righteousness. Either way, the name is fitting. And the name of the city he was king of means peace. Jerusalem means city of peace. It seems that he was trying to create a city on the level of Enoch's Zion. Sadly, he and his people were never taken up into heaven as far as we know. But Melchizedek was such a good priest that the priesthood is literally named after him, mostly to avoid speaking the name of the Lord too much, according to D&C 107. Hebrews 7 says Melchizedek was like the Son of God. Thus, he was a type of Christ, who collected tithing to put it in the storehouse of God and give to the poor. Melchizedek brought Abram bread and wine, and blessed him. Abram then gave Melchizedek 1/10 of everything he owned, showing his devotion to God and his gratefulness for the riches the Lord had given him. In Genesis 15, Abram is having a small crisis of faith. Abram was elderly, his wife was unable to have children, and he seemed no closer to receiving the blessing that God had told him he would have, descendants as numerous as the stars of heaven. And so God comforted him by having him get a cow, a goat, a ram, a turtle dove, and a pigeon, and then cut them in half. Then God restated his promise to Abram, and the Lord passed between the pieces of the animals. This was an ancient way for someone to make a covenant. It's essentially saying, if I don't fulfill my promise to you, you can cut me in half like you did these animals. God was going to keep his promise. Genesis 16 tells us of Hagar, a slave owned by Abram. Sarai suggested that Abram have a child with her to give him an heir. So Abram married her, and she became pregnant, after which Hagar looked on Sarai with contempt, and Sarai dealt harshly with her, causing Hagar to run away. This is fitting considering that the name Hagar means flight. The Lord came to Hagar and told her to return to Abram and Sarai, promising that if she did, the Lord would give her numberless offspring. She was told to call her child Ishmael, a name that means God listens, because there God listened to her affliction. Hagar calls the Lord El Roi, meaning the God who sees. Thus, being comforted, Hagar returned to Abram and gave him his first son at the age of 86. Abram was 99 years old at the start of Genesis 17, when God appeared to Abram and told him to walk before him and be perfect, or blameless. God yet again repeated his covenant, and the Lord officially changed his name from Abram to Abraham. The name Abram means exalted father, and Abraham means the father of many. Sarai means princess, which was changed to Sarah, which also means princess. He was then told from that point onwards to circumcise every male, which, kind of like baptism, was an outward ritualistic sign of a covenant between them and God. Then the Lord told Abraham that he and Sarah would have a child together. Their reaction? They laughed, saying, "Can a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Can Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child?" To that the Lord said, "Yeah, and you're going to call his name Isaac, a name that means laughter." Never say that God doesn't have a sense of humor, and never suppose that he doesn't keep his promises.